Gee, that's a tough act to follow. And it's very difficult too when, we're a massive fan of Melbourne and what Melbourne's done for placemaking, and it's an example that people around the world try and aspire to. So I don't want to necessarily disagree with Rob's outcomes and his vision, but what I'd like to point out is infilling cities and urban areas is the easy bit. It's how you create place from a blank canvas is the hard bit. And the experience that we've gone through at Victoria Harbour, what we're going through in other parts of the country mean you simply can't do it on your own. So when Rob talks about planning, quite rightly, it creates the vision and it creates the what. What planning doesn't tell you is the how. And that's what I'd like to focus on a little bit in terms of a response to what are very graphic and very provocative images about what you can do. I agree with the way that you can create cities from using the canvas that you've got in those cities, and the 7.5% usage to create that extra population is an amazing idea, and I think it should be explored with vigour. Reality is that when all cities in the world have aspirations to somewhere between 70 and 80% of population growth, no matter what planning scheme you look at, no matter what city you look at, is to happen within the urban area. And why does every city in the world fail to deliver that? There isn't one city I know of that is actually achieving that, and that's because the relationships and what I call the clients are very complex. And no one party can do it on its own. So there are three things that I think, in a planning sense, we need to take hold of. How we put that into the planning schemes to help that work is a challenge for, I guess, this forum. The first is creating place from scratch means the delivery of what is the software is much, much harder. And that's what people touch, feel, do, eat, play with, because it isn't the buildings that they touch and feel, it's what they can do around it. I went for a run around the Tan this morning and there would have been 1,000 people. The vision that created that is enormous. So how do you do that from scratch in a new area or a large urban infill area? The second is projects are getting larger and more complex. The relationships you need to deliver that is much more complex. The demand for dealing with population growth is getting harder and harder. So therefore, you can't expect one entity to have all of the skills to deliver those sorts of complex projects. And the reality is the skills exist in our society, and you've actually got to leverage out those skills to make that work. And it's how you get that to work which is the most important thing. So building on that, the third aspect is the alignment of interest between all of the parties that can make this work. So it's the alignment of interest between city, state and the developer or the creator, if you like, or the creation partner, given that complexity, which is what I think is the key to getting that to work. An example that we've just been through with Victoria Harbour is the first workshop we had, and yes, it was a bit of a risk, included Melbourne City Council, Vic Urban, under the directorship of Prue. Rob Moore was involved in that and he's just walking out the room now. Sorry to point you out. But that process generated a whole breadth of skills that actually made the process of the new master plan for Victoria, or the evolving master plan, much, much better to deal with. And I think the outcomes are a lot more informed, and going forward it will be easier to create the software off the back of it. But the reality is that partnership is at the beginning of its journey, because we've got planning, I'd argue, sorted in the main, but it's how do you actually deliver the software for a place like that. And that's where it gets complex, because no one party can deliver the software. The software happens as it happens. You need to plan for it. But I think the planning side needs to have ultimate flexibility so you can be opportunistic in how you deal with the elements that come along. Just to wrap up, I think Rob's view is fantastic. I think what they've done is fantastic, but it's in the context of infill. So what I think we need to do and focus on, which is the harder job of doing things from a blank canvas, Because at the end of the day, we're all here as servants for what is the end client, and the end client are the people who are going to occupy, touch, feel, use the places that we create. Thank you.